Hello and welcome to part 2 of this 4.6 kilometre entertainment photo runs guided tour. The second part of this run goes from Piccadilly Circus to Leicester Square, and this will go via Chinatown, Soho as well as Theatreland. Now, just to give you a view of the route we're going to take, this is slightly more complicated. There's a few more turns to look out for. We start just where we left off at Piccadilly Circus, but we go at the side of the neon lights, the right hand side of those, up Shaftesbury Avenue, all the way up until we get to the Queen's Theatre. We'll turn down into Chinatown, do a small section of Chinatown, then come back up into Soho via Old Compton Street, and then we'll come to the Palace Theatre, which is Cambridge Circus, and then follow the Charing Cross Road down to Leicester Square. So the distance again is about 1 kilometre. Again, best time is always to do this first thing in the morning. Now, as we did before, we're just going to go and show you the route before we do the sights. So we start the run looking at the lights right in front of us, and then we go up Shaftesbury Avenues with the lights on our left hand side, keep on going up this road, be passing a number of theatres along here. This is in a sense Theatreland, which we'll talk about later. Once you pass about the third theatre, we're looking for Les Mis. We'll be turning right down towards Chinatown, and then we'll turn left down to Gerrard Street, and we'll go through the arches of Chinatown. As we get to the next turning, we're going to turn left and then come out of Chinatown, just cross Shaftesbury Avenue, which we've just been on before, and then we'll be on Dean Street, and we'll just go all the way up to Dean Street until we hit Old Compton Street, and then we'll turn right, and then we'll be heading down there, and you'll see that we'll have the Prince Edward Theatre on our left hand side, and we'll have the Three Greyhounds on our right, and in between the Ed's Diner we go down a small little cobbled alleyway, and then we're right in Cambridge Circus, and this is Charing Cross Road in here. And we just turn right, basically, there with the Prince's Theatre on our Palace Theatre on our right. And we keep on coming down this road, which is all full of bookshops, old second-hand bookshops, until we get down to Leicester Square. And that will be the tour, really, of this part of London. So we just stop here just outside Leicester Square on Charing Cross Road, and we're just ready then to start the guided tour. Now, we'll be using the 360 views as we did last time, and very similar to what we started off from the previous run. You can see in front of us we have the lights, and then we have the London Pavilion in front of us, and then we're ready to go. So in order of age, the oldest area in this part of the London is Soho, which dates from 1680. Then we have Regent Street, which is the other side on one of the shopping runs, the two white buildings. That dates from 1819. Then we have Shaftesbury Avenue, which we're just going to go up, which dates from 1886. Then we have the lights here, which date from 1911, 1908, and we're going to have a look at how this route looked like going back in time. If we look at the map from 1560, we can see that it starts really all in the countryside. It would have been completely in the countryside. I've just sketched out how it would have looked going into Soho itself, through Leicester Fields, and then coming back down to where Leicester Square tube station would be. And if we look at the map from 1850, you'll see that the route that we're going to travel on, a lot of it hasn't even been developed. So this was semi-slum sort of areas. There was no real direct route. And we show it going through what used to be the old route to start off with. Then it sort of comes back and starts going to Gerrard Street, which was there, goes through some of the roads that were in Soho, and then comes back towards Charing Cross and Leicester Square. But again, these roads weren't even built, so we wouldn't have been able to go along this route in 1850. we would have needed to wait for Shaftesbury Avenue to be built. So let's go along and go up Shaftesbury Avenue. So this is Shaftesbury Avenue, looking upwards, and this is looking down the road towards Piccadilly Circus. Now this would have been probably the next route for town planning. There was a successful development in Regent Street which basically divided the poorer east part of London, where we're in now, from the richer west side in Mayfair by removing Swallow Streets and clearing out the slums and making it all gentrified. A similar sort of process happened here. It removed the slums, it gentrified the area, it improved traffic, and it brought business and quality entertainment to the area. And this was repeated throughout London, so you'll see that this particular route goes from Regent Street all the way up into New Bond Street. It provided pavements which were a lot wider than the existing streets, and it gave a great thoroughfare for traffic. The architect behind this was Joseph Bazalgette, who was responsible for the Victorian embankment, and he started this in 1877 as part of the Department of Works, and other works included Farringdon, Victoria Street, towards Westminster, as well as New Oxford Street. And for those in Harry Potter, which will be a bit of a theme on this one, there is in the film Deathly Hallows, he flees the Death Eaters just at the bottom of Shaftesbury Avenue. Okay, we're going to go up a bit further towards the turning to go down towards Chinatown. But before we do, just on our right hand side, you can't really see it in here, but there is St Anne's Church. This was built in 1686 and became the parish church for this area because of the expansion of London. This is also Waldorf Street, which we mentioned earlier. It goes all the way from Leicester Square all the way up to Oxford Street along the top. And just going back to St Anne's Church, it was called St Anne's because Bishop Henry Compton was the tutor of the future wife of James I, who was called Anne, and hence why we have Old Compton Street, which we'll get to later. Now, when we look at theatres, for which there are lots, there are about 35 in London, and they do provide a lot of revenue. And in this particular area, we have the Apollo, we have the Gielgud, we have the Lyric, and the Queen's. I'll just take a moment to discuss Theatreland a little bit. So in the City of London, all theatres tend to be outside the city wall. So originally it started off in Curtain Street, which is to the north. Then they moved down to, in 1599 to the Globe, Shakespeare's Globe, which we see by Millennium Bridge. But after the Fire of London in 1666, a lot of the City of London was burnt down and people started to move out to the west, and with that came the entertainment industry. We had a period from 1649 to 1660 where we had a bit of a republic experiment when Charles I got his head chopped off by Oliver Cromwell, but it was all rescued when Charles II came back, the king who brought back partying, and he started to build up the whole of the entertainment district of London. Now, at the time, you didn't have much in the way of theatre. It was tend to be groups of players who produced plays either locally in London and moved around or around the country. Queen Elizabeth I and Charles II were really keen on theatre, and there was a growing population of London. So in Victorian times you had something like 2.6 million, and which grew from 700,000, and therefore it was big business to build theatres. So they do look as if they're part of the scenery. They are very ornate inside, but they are cramped. And they did have the structure of galleries at the top for the poor people, boxes for the rich in the middle, and the pit at the bottom for basically everybody else who could afford it. Okay, so we're going to turn down into Chinatown, which basically consists of Waldorf Street going all the way down to Leicester Square, as well as Gerrard Street, which we'll look at as being the two main streets. It's been there since about the 1970s. It was historically in Limehouse in the docks towards Canary Wharf, but because of the decline of the docks and bombing during the Second World War, it moved here in 1972, and there is about 43 different restaurants around the area. Gerrard Street has been around for many years because it used to have taverns and coffee houses and restaurants to look after the new residents in Leicester Square. And in fact, Mr. Gerrard's from Great Expectations and Charles Dickens is based in this location. The Club 43, which is a notorious nightclub from the Roaring Twenties, was also located in this position. Now, coming out of Chinatown, we go across Shaftesbury Avenue again, and we end up at the beginnings of Soho, actually onto Old Compton Street, as we see here. Now, this is the main east to west route going through Soho, but on each of the streets we have Greek Street further up, we have Dean Street, and we have First Street, all have their own individual characters of Soho, which we'll look at Soho in a bit more detail in another video. But again, this area was developed in Henry VIII's time, but as a royal park, because this would have been the first part of the hunt. And the word Soho comes from a hunting cry at the start of hunt, and apparently they used to say Soho or something similar to start the hunt, probably before they had horns. The area was developed after 1666 by Henry Jermyn, who also developed Jermyn Street. And originally, again, it was built for the rich and the up-and-coming classes, but after the Great Fire of London, it needed to accommodate more people, and by 1750, the rich had moved west. The area had become famous for retail and entertainment, and there'd been quite a large influx of immigrants from France with the Huguenots, who were Protestants who were being persecuted there. And the area slowly went downhill. There was lots of the bigger houses became tenement blocks where the house was rented, but it was sub-rented into different apartments, and then the floors had their own set of rents, and then the rooms, and it became smaller and smaller, but very compact. And you even had people like Karl Marx living here from 1849 in 28 Dean Street. But moving on, we're just going to move towards the east now, going past the Prince Edward Theatre, which was built in the 1930s for Edward VIII, who was the Duke of Windsor, but he was also our 20th century king who abdicated. So the theatre became a music hall and a cinema, as well as a casino, but is now back again as a theatre. And then we just turn in between the diner and the Three Greyhounds towards Cambridge Circus. Now, it's called the Three Greyhounds because this was an area for hunting, and they used to like hare coursing in this particular part of London. So we're now in Cambridge Circus, outside the Palace Theatre, where Harry Potter the Cursed Child is being shown. This was put together by D'Oyly Carte, who was a theatre manager made famous for his running of the Gilbert and Sullivan plays. It was originally meant as an opera house, but became a theatre, and there's been plays such as Jesus Christ Superstar, Les Mis shown in there, Spamalot, and now we have Harry Potter. In the Harry Potter books, there is a pub called the Leaky Cauldron, which was placed in Charing Cross Road, which is this road which goes all the way from north to south, but it doesn't appear in the films. That seems to show it in Borough Market or Leadenhall, depending on which film you're looking for. However, in the Half-Blood Prince, when the Millennium Bridge gets destroyed, the Death Eaters do zoom across London and go down Diagon Alley, which is just off Leicester Square Station, which we'll see at the last part of the run. Now, there are pubs which you could say have Leaking Cauldron type properties. The one I like is the two near Chandos Place, which are the Harp and the Marquess. That's right near the narrowest alley in London, called Bridges Place, and that almost gives you the sense of apparating as you end up coming out onto St Martin's Lane. Back in the real world, we'll end up at Leicester Square, where we have two things to finish off. One is the Hippodrome in front of us, which refers to a place of entertainment where horse racing was staged, and as you can see, there are some horses at the top of the building. It was built in 1900 as a variety performance and has been a theatre until 1951. Then it was the talk of the town in the 70s. It was an event space in the 80s and it's a casino today. The other building on the other side of the road is the Wyndham Theatre, and this was developed by Charles Wyndham, who was not only a surgeon but a theatre manager, and he's built this relatively small theatre next to Leicester Square tube station, which when it was first built was actually called Cranbourne Station in 1906, but in 1935 it was revamped to convert it to escalators and called Leicester Square, and if you go down there you'll see some Phil sprockets on the tiles. Okay. And that ends this part of the run.